Coaches, welcome back. Got a great guest for you here again today, Coach Caleb Corrill. Coach has been very active lately, especially with my coaching career development. He's very active on Twitter and X, and he's a very good resource for, a lot of different coaches that are out there. Maybe you've seen the Student of the Game podcast on Coach and Coordinator Network. I know it's certainly one of my favorites, but Coach, we're super excited for you to finally join us here today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be on a Minnesota-based podcast, even though I'm not in the state anymore. Enjoyed my time up there, but yeah, I've enjoyed getting to know you through the coaching lens and our communication back and forth. But really just fired up to be able to hash it out today on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Now, for those coaches who aren't familiar with you, you've taken a wide range of different jobs to get to the place where you're at right now. Give us just a little bit of a summary of where you've been and how you got to your current position at Georgetown.
Yeah, so early on, I'm the son of a high school coach. I kind of grew up on a sideline. It was a real small school. Grew up east of Cincinnati, about 30 miles. My dad was a head high school football coach for my formative years, which kind of planted the seeds. Coming out, I started in the high school level, which I tell a lot of people are kind of surprised with, but I'll tell young guys like 10 years ago to the day, I was a JV defensive backs coach at a school with 500 kids in it at the high school level. And then I got an opportunity at the Division III level, Mount St. Joe in Cincinnati. They brought me on in an unpaid position. I was basically the assistant to the quarterbacks coach, and kind of served in that role for 2 years, proved my worth in the recruiting realm. And then there was a staff turnover, and at like 27 years old, Tyler Hopperton, who's the head coach at Mount St. Joe, and we got put interim tags on us. One is the interim head coach, myself as interim OC. About 4 weeks into that deal, we got the interims tags taken off, and I spent 7 years as the coordinator at Mount St. Joe, and really proud of what we were able to do there. Got it all the way to where we were. We both from a football program and an offensive perspective, broke a ton of different records for the school, went back-to-back playoff appearances, which I think allowed me to get the opportunity up in Minnesota in St. Paul at the FCS level, St. Thomas, which was a unique experience. It was an awesome jump for me going from Division III to the FCS level. And then a buddy of mine who's now my boss and the head coach here at Georgetown, John Perrin, got elevated to the head coaching role down here in Georgetown, Kentucky, which is near Lexington. So pretty close to where we grew up, but him taking his first job and then having a little bit more creative control with the offensive operation was really what drew me in here. It's a winning program. There's national championships, that they've won. Trying to get this place back there. So that brought me back to the, to down south and the NAI level. But yeah, it's been unique because I was at one spot for so long, but then I've seen in the last, I don't know, just a little bit over a calendar year, I've seen a lot of different football when I was in one place for a long time. So it's been good. I've learned a lot. I've seen both good and bad from football perspectives and just, situational fits, but definitely have learned a lot and have probably what we'll talk about today, have really come to know what I truly believe in as a coach. And I think that's probably what we're all searching for and just kind of the core tenets and the principles, and then obviously offensive philosophy and vision. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm going in my 9th season as a coordinator. I believe it's my 11th season coaching college football and just fired up.
Now, Coach, with training camp right around the bend here, how do you structure your install schedule to make sure that you got not just your schematic things to get in place, but also to rehash and reestablish those fundamentals? Take us through a typical install schedule for you guys heading into training camp.
Yeah, it's good that you asked the question because I've been staring at our Google sheet for the last week or 2 weeks. It feels like in the install schedule, and something I take obviously very seriously. But I have a couple different things I think about. The first thing, like you said, to me, it's all about trying to make sure that there's a thematic perspective that the install has, where you want as much as you can, your run to tie to your pass and formation, variations to be able to not only serve one purpose in an install, but multiple things in that day. And I think that's kind of where the the craft and the and artist, artistry type vision comes into place. But I think about our early in our install. To me, those are the core fundamental principles of our offense. We should be able to win, the first game of the season with that install. So that's kind of what drives my mentality. But then when I get down to breaking it down, I do what I call an A and B install. And so I've studied all the different guys and the air raid, and the guys that do the 3 day install, and I've never been comfortable with throwing everything at the kids and then coming back to it. I like a more methodical approach to the install, and to me, um, a lot of it to me is just it might just be for myself of having confidence that we've spent we've focused on particular concepts, we've seen it might not be the success that it's going to ultimately be at, but we've seen success before we move on. In this A-B format, the way I'll look at it is we'll have a 1A, a 1B, a 2A, 2B, all the way through 4, so 8 days. And what it serves for me is, okay, on the A install, it's your base forms of concepts. So you could take something as simple as inside zone, and okay, you're establishing that on 1A, and you're insulating it with whatever you do, RPOs and play action. And on the B format, it's usually a variation to the base concept. So if you think of any base concept, our B days are the same concept, same teaching points, but some type of variation. So some years it's been, hey, we're going to do a same side zone CO, and then we're going to do a split zone, or we're going to do our split zone, and then we're going to do our insert zone. It's still the same concept. We might apply different RPOs to it. We might apply different formations or backfield sets. I think that's another way to get variance. And the same thing goes for each of our core concepts, is where it'll get an official install day on the A portion of the install. And then we'll follow it up where we believe we can double down on the teaching and the principles and key coaching points. But all we're trying to do is create multiple variations for that said concept. And we'll do that, like I said, through 8 days. And, we still build, we're going to be, we believe in throwing the football, but we're still going to build our offense around what we do up front in the run game. So a lot of it emanates out from, okay, what do we want to establish? It's usually what's our best personnel grouping? Okay, what's our base run out of that? How do we emanate the rest of the install off of that, and then start to place it together? And that's where I think the core concepts get placed pretty seamlessly. But I think it gets interesting when you start to do formation variants and things like that, and trying to make sure that when maybe a 3-man bunch goes in, does it apply to not just, hey, we want to put this pass concept in, but can we do multiple things out of it, to where it doesn't matter if you have tendencies in camp. But I think it's good practice to understand where tendencies are and always be trying to break them, because naturally as play callers, we're going to get into a season and a flow of things we really like out of this set, and before you know it, you have a glaring tendency that defenses are picking up on, and you're going to need to reset. So we try to do that throughout the course of our install, and so it allows us to be very intentional with what we're teaching and getting multiple days to teach it. And then it also allows us to be methodical in the process of kind of a slow drip of building out the system. And it also, I think what we do really a good job of is with each subsequent install, I think it builds on the previous one, in that, okay, this is our main way to run a play. This is our alternative. Okay, now defenses, usually what happens against this concept is defenses are going to do either this or this. All right. And then in that, that next, next grouping in the install, we are providing our players with answers. So we're showing them how we build out a system and trying to tie it together where they're seeing the game as close to as possible, the way that we see it as coaches. And that's kind of something I've really gotten big on, is like really telling kids, why would we run this concept? What purpose does it serve? What problem does it solve? When a defense defends, the base concept in this way, we are going to go to this answer. And so a lot of moving parts. It takes, we've got multiple rough drafts and iterations of the install. I think the core values stay the same, from each year to year. But obviously, when you're with a new group of players and a new conference, you got to make sure that you have the appropriate tools to play it out in that that particular season. So that's kind of our mentality of it. I really enjoyed that process. It's kind of painstaking at times, but to me, it's just like I'm my wife was a teacher for a long time. My dad was an educator. I have an education background. I think that you're basically building out your lesson plans, and you can always adjust. Good teachers always adjust within them based on how the information is being interpreted. But I think when you have that big picture view, and then you start working, essentially a day for us in football is like a week in a teaching teaching methodology, where it's like, okay, here's this week, it's going to lead to this next week, and then ultimately we need to have these skills checked off by the time that either the kids are finishing the year, they're taking their standardized test, or they're graduating, whatever that may be.
Now, taking a look at like the more of a personal player development type lens here, how do you balance that development of like a returning player who maybe has had a couple of years in the system? How do you balance that with a brand new player to your system when you're trying to plan out reps, install of new concepts? I think I heard, on one of the podcasts talking about how, as coaches, we want to install so much and we don't think this one little tag is really going to have that big of a difference. But for a new player, that one tag is a lot of information for them to kind of process. So when you're kind of thinking through that player development, what are some of the things you're looking for when evaluating those concepts?
That's a great question. So to me, one thing that we did in going into the 2022 season, in 2023 season at Mount St. Joe, we'd had a fair amount of success, but we knew we wanted to take that next jump. And something that I did that spring ball leading into the season, where we ended up being, a top 3 offense in the country, was we prided our older kids in, hey, we are going to reteach this from the ground up. And something that a phrase I've been saying with our players here at Georgetown is, you can never take enough notes on an individual concept. You can never hear enough installs of an individual concept, because to me, it should be layered growth, right? So to me, I look at it with the old guys of fine tuning details, but then what I'm doing for a player development side is obviously they're hearing it in a 300 level or 400 level lens, where these young guys or incoming new guys are hearing it for the first time. And so what I try to do is I teach our older guys to pride themselves on relearning the concept. And the longer that you play for me, you will hear this installed hopefully 3 to 4 different times throughout the calendar year, with the different various parts of the season and the off season calendar. But then we're using our old guys to be sounding boards and be part of the teaching process for the young guys. So we will do a lot of call and response. Hey, when we want to get in this, this condensed set, why are we doing that? We'll make older kids say, hey, this is why we do this. Or when we do this particular motion, why are we doing that? And to me, I'm getting a gauge for how well the older kids understand it, but now they're putting a player lens and perspective and putting it out there to where, obviously us as coaches, you and I, we're studying football. I mean, there's a very few days of the years where you don't look at football in some degree, right? And now they're hearing it from a player to player, peer to peer perspective. The other thing that I really believe in, even at the college level, is really trying to, rep the new guys, the younger guys, and developing depth in camp. I know that, most places, from what I've seen, is there's a very established first, second, and third team coming in. Something that we did at Mount St. Joe that I thought was radical, and honestly, I didn't like it when we first did it, but I will do this anytime that I'm in charge of a training camp schedule. We would mix the groups of players. So we'd have 3 groups on offense and 3 groups on defense, and you would mix and match them. So now it wasn't, by the time you get to the 4th group, it's all freshmen. Nobody knows what's going on. It's a cluster. No, the coaches are thinking about the first group, and we would put our senior starting quarterback, he'd have a sprinkle of the starting offensive line. He'd have an older guy or 2 on the receiving end, but we'd insulate that with young guys. And what we wanted them to do is the young guys to be able to, within play to play, look at the older guys and have that immediate feedback. I also like using it because I like to see what older guys, the guys that we believe are top people, can they elevate other humans in their group, or are they've got as good as the people are around them, that's as good as that they can be. And so we would always, and then we would mix and match the groups day to day. And Offensive line is probably the one area that we would keep it a little bit more traditional, but I believe in diversity in personnel groupings, and I like to try to play a lot of different humans, and that comes from my high school background of just like if you don't play them, they don't stay. And I guess college has a similar idea of that, but we would mix and match. So I want to see the quarterback throw with this group of skill guys today, and then the next day he's got a totally different group of guys because that's kind of our theory and how we want to play on Saturdays. But ultimately, what happened is we developed real depth. So we didn't only just develop the first and the second quarterback, all of those guys were getting real reps, if you will. There were, we would develop, receiving rooms of 7, 8, 9, 10 guys because of the way that we practiced and the way that we saw it. So I think, to me, obviously the new guys, it's gonna take them a little bit longer, but I really believe in reteaching it from the ground up every time you come into a new season. So when we get into spring ball, we will do the same thing. When we get into training camp, we'll do the same thing because you already mentioned it. Without the fundamentals of any, scheme on either side of the football, that scheme is it's gonna be lackluster. So developing the fundamentals and really making sure that we have an understanding of why we are doing what we are doing, having the ability in a couple day setting to get good at that concept before transitioning. That's my mentality of bringing guys along. And I would say lastly, I just truly believe in teaching is the great separator of coaching, right? And to me, I pride myself in being able to teach it in depth, in detail, trying to bring the vision of the concept to life and being able to teach it to multiple different learners, whether that's a 22-year-old player that's been in the system a long time or getting a really talented freshman ready to go to play in that season. I often will tell them, as long as they're willing learners, it's my job to get them ready to understand the concept. If you play as hard as you can, all right, you're a willing learner that's willing to take notes and listen to the film watch, we will get you ready based on how we're going to teach it. So I think it's a great question. I think it's something that, when there is a result, I think it's a little easier in spring ball because there's not a result. I think in training camp, everyone's aware that, for you guys on Fridays and for us on Saturdays, everyone's going to know how well that week of work went for us, right? But I believe in depth. I believe in developing, and obviously you're trying to project your success out from not just the 4-month period you have that group, but you're trying to project it out into a 2, 3, 4, 5-year window, which is what I think we did so well at Mount St. Joe that we're going to try to replicate here.
At what point in training camp do you guys start addressing your situational work? Whether it be red zone, third down, at the high school level, that could be anywhere in the second week in practice, third week in practice. And I obviously know that college is a little bit different depending on when the timeline of your first game is. But for you guys, when do you guys start addressing your situational work?
Another excellent question. And that's one that, so our head coach is our defensive coordinator. He's a first year head coach. We've had this discussion multiple times. We just actually had it last Friday to kind of set it. So basically, what I do is, hey, when do you? I like it later. I prefer it to be later because to me, I want to get the base concepts in where I'm not like adjusting them because we do a lot of designers in the red zone as well. And to me, spending time in the 4th day of camp on a designer, it just doesn't feel right to me. I want the core base fundamentals of our concepts to be in place because once those are in place, we can extrapolate them to meet what they need to meet in the red zone. So for us, I believe it's going to happen on the sixth day of camp for us this year, and we're going to slow build it. So we're going to work red zone scale at first, and then we're going to do it into like a higher tempo run through type period where it's not there's no result at the end of the play. It's kind of a match a run fit match route period for the defense, and then it's us just feeling out the space on the field, how these concepts change, but there's no ball thrown, there's no result, which I think is a great area to teach and coaches. I'm as bad as anybody. You don't get tied to the result. You're just teaching. And then we will ultimately lead that to red zone period that's all 11 on 11, and it's got the true team feel, and then it's kind of followed up with like that inter squad type of scrimmage. So now you can when it comes to fruition in a true flow of a quote unquote game. Now we're able to implement it and see how we can get it called in and subbed in from the sideline. But I like it a little bit later, just because I think it is so unique. We obviously spend a good deal of time on it, but if I really like getting most of our install in before we start transitioning our focus there. I think we have a good balance of the two with the way that we're doing it, where it's not all at once. You have to have all this red zone, and now we got to bump install day. We can slow filter it, right? Okay, let's do red zone scale, and then let's build it to a slower tempo run through match routes, fit, run fit period, and then we'll do it in team. I think that's a very fair way to do it. But for us, like red zone is very unique. Now third downs, my perspective is obviously you've got to have some situational stuff for third downs, but I've just grown the belief of like we're going to dial up and study red zone like anybody else. But to me, I'm willing to have third downs come in a lot earlier. Like we'll have third downs represented in our practices on like day 2 or 3. And pretty much what I tell our guys is like when it comes down to it, I'm going to call our best plays on a third down, final down situation. And we just have to be aware of the down and distance. We have to be aware of the pros and cons of that concept. We have to be aware of what type of defenses present themselves on third downs and what, a lot of them, okay, you get 3rd and 7, it's going to Tampa 2 and it's going to umbrella in teaching our guys how to attack that situation. But I like that because we don't do like, I'm against doing like a third down period where it's a third down every rep, because to me that's not realistic. If you do not convert the third down as an offense, you have to come off the field, right? And if you're a defense, it might have a little bit more realism if you're giving it up. But I feel like if you get a stop on third down, there should be some reward for the defense, and the offense should be alerted like we are no longer get to participate on this drive because now we have to punt the ball. So third downs, I'm a little more willing because we'll have game plan specific, but to me, what's our best stuff? What type of net can we expect on this concept? Okay, call that concept in that situation. Be aware of, is it a man team? Is it a Tampa team? Are they going to, play sticks coverage? Okay, that adjusts this concept slightly, but we pride ourselves in developing concepts that handle as many different coverage contours as possible.
Love that. I mean, just simply adding in some realism to practice, adding a legitimate consequence that's tangible to players. I think that's easy to teach kids situations. It's also really good to reinforce the importance, like you said, without creating just a simple period just for a certain situation. Now,
Yep.
transitioning a little bit into this is more in-season stuff, but certainly there's a lot of teams going to be now in the process of planning for that game 1 of the
Yep.
football season. So take us through a typical workflow for you guys on a typical week, starting from, the first day of preparation throughout. I always find it interesting to kind of look at what does a coordinator do first and how do they delegate certain responsibilities? And then how do they use that to pare down the game plan throughout the week?
It's a really good question. We were just talking about this the other day as an offensive staff. So for us, we'll come in Sunday, in the main emphasis before we transition to that is closing up the previous game, doing any type of physical work with our guys to get the soreness and things out. But then once we finish, wrapping up the previous game, pretty much what I view the rest of that Sunday is we will do what we call self watch. So all offensive coaches will be on their own. And that way, each guy. So a lot of the delegation and that time frame would be tagging the film, getting any tendency reports, and then a personnel breakdown. For me, the first thing I do on that Sunday is I want to watch 2 games. Usually, it's the most recent. If there's a particular matchup I'm really interested in with an offense that I feel has similar principles to us, I may watch that. But it's usually the last 2 games. And I even prefer it to be like the YouTube live stream. Like I want to see the flow of the game, right? And in that, obviously I'm looking at structure and I'm looking at general ideas. Who are their people? How do they, what did this team have success with, or what did they not have success with against that defense? But I want to see how the coordinator calls in a traditional flow of the game. And then through that, we'll come in Monday morning, and basically we have the first hour, hour and a half of our day on Monday. We'll be finalizing that self watch. And the first thing that we do together is we'll come together, and before any film is watched as a unit, what I do is a round table. And I kind of got this from hearing Andy Reid, the way that he uses his offensive staff as to generate ideas, and everybody gets a day to kind of put their ideas on the board. We'll go around the room, and I'll go last, and you just go, okay, what are your thoughts on the opponent? What do we need to do to win? And it's a general, and obviously your O-line coach, it'll be more centered to the box and how they think that things need to play out that way. But you'll get anything from who the personnel, like who their talented people are, who are the people we believe we need to attack, what general schemes come to mind, what the mentality of the week needs to be based on. Is it a road game? Is it a home game? Is it a game that's, a circle on the schedule, or is it one of those trap games, right? You'll get a little bit of everything. And then I'll kind of close that loop with, this is after Sunday and reviewing and reflecting. These are the main like 5 or 6 points that I think we need to carry with us throughout the game planning and throughout the preparation. As soon as we do that, then we go by formation. And we're going open downs by formation, and we're spending Monday, pretty much the entirety of Monday, of generating our awareness to how they want to defend the formations. What things we need to adjust rules to be able to prepare for. But ultimately, when we walk out there on Monday, we need to have what I call menu. It's on the whiteboard, and it's a by formation menu. That by formation starts with your run game and builds out to the subsequent different areas of offense. And essentially, it's a mind dump of like, this is what we believe we want to utilize in this game. And usually you'll come up with a couple of the more unique things that you want to try just from watching that much film. But we'll start in base formations, and then we'll work our way to some of the more unique formations and try to find multiple ways to attack them. But we do that as a group, and I truly believe in that. I want everybody on the staff's input. Hopefully, you're around other guys that, are willing to give their, feedback and ideas, and it's your job as a coordinator to course through them. But honestly, I try to leave Monday as open-ended as possible. Let's get it on the board. We're not going to run everything that's on this board, but it's a mind dump. It's a brain dump of all of these ideas. And then we have a mentality in our operation. So Monday, after we finish all that, you go home and eat dinner and go to sleep. I tell them that the finalization of that menu is Tuesday morning. We want to sleep on it, because there's oftentimes that there's an element or two of the game plan that's just rattling around your brain. You don't quite have the answer. I really don't like, well, we can't come up with any ideas, so let's just do this. Let's just do this because that's what you're supposed to do. I don't really like those ideas. I want them to be very pragmatic, but I want them to be ideas that have high intent. So on Tuesday morning, first thing we do is we put our stamp on the game plan. It's gone anywhere from, we came in, we really like what we brainstormed, we're good with it, and I've come in and I go, I really don't think that what we game planned in the run game is any good. We've got to rethink it, right? I've seen everything in between. You got to be willing to adjust it. So we'll put that stamp on there. And then what we'll be working on from there is Tuesdays will be a section where we spin the third down film, and we're starting to generate ideas. We're preparing for that open down practice on Tuesday, which is just a implementation of the game plan. Here's our base calls. Here are some of the new formations and movements that we want. That'll be our focus for the day. And then Tuesday evening after practice, we'll come in and put about an hour of work on stamping the third down menu. All right. So we'll come in, I'll have watched it. Our other coaches will have watched the third down throughout the day, but then we'll come in. All right, here's what we want to do. Here's who we want to, we want to target on our end for the third downs. We'll stamp that, which leads us into Wednesday, which gives us the ability to prepare for that practice, which now has a third down emphasis and element to it. And then we're starting to sprinkle throughout that Wednesday, as after we prepare for practice, we're starting to wrinkle in the red zone mentality. And usually, I like for everyone kind of similar to building the overall game plan of watch it individually, collect some ideas, and then when we come together, let's see how these things mesh together. Is there a funky formation? Is there a change of personnel grouping? Are there things that play off of each other that we can utilize? Building the red zone, which, like I said, has designers within it. We'll run base stuff, but it's very designer heavy in the red zone, which is probably the main area where we'll actually like create something new in a game plan. And so we'll carry that. Thursday's focus is bringing the whole game plan together, where it's got your open down period, it's got a third down element to it. We've got our blitz pickup, and we've got our red zone, and then any type of special scenario situations. But one thing I think that we do that's unique, that is a game planning element that brings the players into it, is on Thursday, our pre-practice meeting. We've already got this third down menu, and we've already practiced it. We put it on film, and we've evaluated it. What I'll do is I'll go around the room in the skill position room, and if any guy that has a realistic shot to be in the game on a third down, I'll go around the room and I'll ask, okay, all right, Clayton, it's 3rd and 6, ball's coming to you. What do you want? And he'll have to say it in front of the whole room. And I'll go around to the different receivers and the running backs and the tight ends, and I'll finish with the quarterback. I'll get 3 from the starter and 3 from the number 2. And basically we're collecting this data. And what I do from that is I look at the menu that we created as coaches, the menu that we created, the players came up with. I want to see how much crossover there is. And then every single time we will get a finer detail, just recognition or awareness to, man, that's a good idea. We had that idea, but this player called for it. Let's make sure he's in that position to run that concept. Because ultimately, once the system's taught well enough, I believe I would rather go down on what our players truly believe in. Hey, it's this situation, game's on the line. Throw the ball to me on this route. Perfect. Let's roll it. So that's something I started doing later in my tenure at Mount St. Joe, and I loved it. On my call sheet would have the third down calls and then the particular player that may have called for it. So I'm trying to set it up not only by scheme, but by personnel. And that's something I think we've done unique. And throughout the week, we're involving the quarterback in the process a little bit, each day. Trying not to overstimulate them, but just so they can hear the mentality of why we're doing so, how we're going to attack them, why we're going to attack them, what adjustments we need to be in tune with, and then obviously like protection, based things that may have to be checked or adjusted on the line of scrimmage. Friday's a walkthrough, and we call it a run through it here at Georgetown. And to me, what I like to do is I like to almost simulate a game in the run through. So if we get 30 minutes, it may be a shortened version of it, but basically what I do is I don't, I'll kind of verbalize situations, but I'll literally go, okay, ball spotted, it's P and 10, here we go. And then I'll call out, hey, it's 3rd and 6, and I'm working off that third down call. I'll do 6-7 plays on that drive. Okay, we're in the red zone. Here's a red zone call here. Here's the next red zone call. We scored. Next drive, excuse me. And then we'll sub and we'll do it again. And what I'm trying to do is visualize the game playing out, but also get that muscle memory of actually calling the game, saying the words that need said, signaling the way it needs signaled, subbing the way it needs subbed. So our kids can kind of just feel us working through different plays, and whether they know the exact line of thinking, they're feeling them become attached. And that's essentially what I started doing late at my tenure at Mount St. Joe that I really appreciated, just because you're trying to play that game. You're going to play the game on Friday night to yourself on Thursday night in your own head. But now I can kind of bring it to life, and there's minimal defense. We might give a box, but really if I want them to visualize a particular defense, I'll call a play and be like, hey, you're getting this look. And whether that means a check or a route adjustment, I want to see them. Okay, I'm getting this look. This is how I'm going to beat this route. Execute the play in a run through mentality. All right, we're on to the next. And we're just tying together the play calls that we've packaged, starting Monday on this whiteboard. And now we're bringing it into this consolidated effort of things that are essentially going to matriculate the football, put the football in the end zone, and allow us to do it. Um, get the ball in the end zone 5, 6, 7 times a game.
Next question I have for you has to do with I think, common question that coaches, especially coordinators, probably talk about is the opening script. You have different, philosophies on the use of that, how detailed it should be, 10, 15 plays, whatever. There's people out there who are of the belief of those 10 plays are information gatherers. There's believers out there, those 10 to 15 plays are, your best stuff against what you think is going to be the most productive, plays against that particular defense. What's your view and your staff's view on, do you utilize an opening script? And if you do, what are some of the things you include in that?
Yeah, so these are all ideal questions because we've just had these internal conversations. So I've done it multiple different ways. When I first started, I kind of followed the traditional viewpoint of having that somewhere between 12, 15, sometimes would stretch out to 20 openers, and I think that there's a lot of value in that. That's similar to the way that it was kind of expected to be done at St. Thomas. But the way I've come to look at the openers is there's definitely got to be an element of information collecting. I think that's obvious, right? And especially you want to see how they react to your base stuff. But if you utilize unique formations or motions or shifts that you think you kind of like extrapolated or built out in the game plan, you want to see what you're getting. I think there's value in that. But what and I'm different than most. We don't have an established, these are the plays that we're running. Like, it's got to be off of this list. Now, I like hearing we need to see empty early. We need to see bunch early. We need to see 12 personnel. We need to see a nub formation. I like all of that stuff. But to me, it's more of let's come out of the gate firing. Let's run the best stuff that we've game planned, right? That we know solves two things. A, it's going to allow us to be successful early in the game or have the chance to be successful. You're also collecting information to then build your game, the way the game needs to be called as you go through it. So it's kind of that, but I also am a lot more free in how I approach a script or whatnot. Because like in a practice, we only the way when I do it, I only script inside and blitz pickup. Everything else is unscripted to me. And the reason why it probably sounds insane, I know I had to talk to my new boss about it, is it's not to get a leg up our defense. We don't have to beat Georgetown's defense. What I want to do is I want to practice play calling all the time. Now, I'll have a menu, just like what you're saying, for the beginning of a game. Ideally, I'm not going rogue and doing something that we didn't discuss. I'll have a menu, like a reference point. So when we go into a period or we go into that like opening mentality of the game, we've got an idea of how we want to attack them. But I want to run our best stuff. I want to come right at them. I want to be aggressive. I ultimately want to see schematically what the response is. But like, let's see how good both this offense and your defense is. Let's just see what's up at the beginning of the game. And now we're going to gauge, okay, where there might be a scheme adjustment needed, or there's a personnel wrecker on the defense that we've got to, okay, he's as good as advertised. We've got to account for it. But I have done the other way. I know when my dad called plays, he was a big opening script guy. But one of the young guys I worked with at Mount St. Joe he kind of picked up on the way that I like to call a game and the way that he could see me call in practice. And he's like, I think you're putting yourself in a box with this script. Like, obviously, yeah, we need to see these things, but what I'm against is being robotic in the flow to open the game. It's like, if you're we want to be a free flowing offense, let's free flow. Let's see how this is. And we should have the way we teach our system, the way we build it, it has subsequent answers built into it, which, okay, we run the play. How does the defense react? Okay, our concept should react like this. All right. And then the answer is layered on top of that concept, and we'll come back to it, in the following drive or later in the game. And, we still have set up plays. But to me, the first couple drives, man, just, I'm an aggressive mentality offensive guy. We're going to come at you. We're going to put our stuff out there. You're going to line up and play. We're going to line up and play. And we're going to see which direction the flow of the game needs to go. And I think a lot of people have a misinterpretation of me. Like it's like like people think that all we do is throw the football, and that's not accurate at all. People think that it's a finesse offense. That's not accurate at all. And to me, it's free flowing because the concepts build off of each other. Like we are collecting data every time we run a concept, and then we're looking for either the subsequent post snap adjustment or the subsequent layer of that concept on top of it to call. And we'll set up plays for shots down the line, but I like to have that ability to within the series adjust as necessary, not get tied down to okay, if we want to adjust personnel in the first drive, why can't we adjust personnel? It's not we scripted it out to be an 11 or 12, and okay, that's what the script says. No, if we want to go to something else in the middle of that first drive to have success, like let's do it. Let's use that information appropriately in between drives. But that's kind of how I've looked at it. Is we want to put our stuff out there, and we want to see how you react, and then we got to be good coaches and adjust and teachers and communicators as it's a long game. Hopefully we're snapping it a bunch and we're going to see a lot of different defensive reactions. We have the answers built into the game plan, but I like to leave it a little bit more open, because to me that's another great way to avoid tendencies when you're not guessing, but you're leaving it open-ended based on what you believe is correct for that individual play call, and not this script is telling you what to do. And I've seen it done where you script plays, but then you call the script that you spent all this time on, and then you don't come back or you don't use it. We did all this for what? Like, for what purpose? I'd rather run base plays, day one install base plays, collect information that way because our system's built off of that, and then make the adjustments, then run all this extravagant stuff, but then it does nothing for how the game is called and played the rest. I've seen it done that way, and I did not agree with that. So I know it's different for me, but I believe that it is orderly. There is a reason behind it. There's a why. We're looking for particular things, but ultimately we want to run our best stuff and ultimately see what a defense's ultimate reaction is, and then play off of them.
Now, one of the great things that I've gained from you over the last year, and we've gotten through one of our many correspondence, we've talked about how we train the quarterback to move from maybe a front side concept to a backside concept. And, I've been going through, shout out to Bobby Peters, all the great books that he produces. He has a lot of these backside concepts that work into the front side that have answers to whatever the defense is doing to take away your front side concept. And so one of the things I want to talk about next is, whether it be smash or whatever it is to your front side that you're trying to teach your quarterback to work through, what are some of the things that you coach a quarterback through to help him get to that backside concept more efficiently?
Yeah, that was when you sent me that question, I thought it was really good because it made me reflect on what we were actually teaching and why we were teaching it. And shout out to Bobby, by the way. Bobby's a man. I got to meet him from living up in Minnesota and recruiting the Chicago area. And I know Kurt Warner, like I really like Kurt Warner's content, but he is not a proponent of that backside. I am a proponent of the pure progression type of mentality. But the one thing that I've really reflected on is I think sometimes it gets misconstrued. Pure progression is not indicated on a defender. And to me, I don't see it that way. Basically, what you're asking, the way that we'll utilize, the front side to go to the backside is we're looking for an indication on this front side concept that maybe it's designed to beat one high, maybe it's designed to beat man, maybe it could be designed to whatever. It's complemented with something that's usually coming to the quarterback, and ideally, it's complementing what you're trying the opposite end of the spectrum of what you're attacking on the front side. And so like a great one to me, like that you could visualize is if you're in 2x2 and you ran classic smash, but you have your vertical as an inside fade. To me, that's a great man cover 3 answer. Like that just has built-in answers. Okay. And then you complement it with old school 95 Y cross. Okay. You've got your under Sam over Mike that's working to the middle of the field, maybe the opposite hash. You have a post curl, and if you feel comfortable enough, you've got flat control with the back. And to me, those two things complement each other because you've got a really nice two high quarters, potentially cover two as long as there's not a middle hole runner answering your Y cross. But we've got this really nice one high concept on the front side where if it's man, we're going to hold the post safety and we're going to throw the ball vertical. And basically what we'll teach them is what looks take away that base front side concept, right? And then we try to make sure that whether it's by formation or motion, we can get some type of indicator to allow us to know. And then we usually boil it down to one and a half humans. Okay, this look is good, but if this human moves in this manner, he's taking away. He's basically flooding that side of the defense with his drop, and it's now needs to cancel and make you come back to the backside. So it is a defender read. It starts by the basic structure, and then we boil it into a defender. The other thing that we'll have is we'll have a very similar setup, and we'll have a backside concept that has some type of shot on it, but then also something that can get you out of trouble. And what we're looking for is a premium look on the backside. And if a safety's too wide or if they're spinning into the front side, okay, we know that's a premium look to go to the backside. And what we'll want to do is we'll want to confirm post snap. All right. And I give them the cue of the confirmation. All right. And then immediately get our eyes there. And essentially what you're doing is now you're bypassing the front side. All right. We're confirming it post snap, bypassing it. All right. Getting to the backside concept earlier in your drop, earlier in your recognition. And now we're really in sync with our feet and our timing to be able to truly access that throw. And we have some type of shot. And then we have something that, okay, if they do drop out of coverage, we have a get out of jail card underneath of it or outside of it or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And ultimately, it is, we're trying to recognize it before the snap. We're trying to confirm it after the snap. And then we want things that are going to like I love, because you're spot on with like the NFL's running a lot of the dagger and they're running like the double end that they're using as their version of Y cross. And it's coming to the quarterback. It's solving a problem on the front side. And they're running a lot of the quick game on the front side or some of those true three-step concepts. And essentially the way I think of it is if they give us something free, take it. If they give us an optimal look for our vertical element of the front side, awesome. All right. But we have a key piece of the puzzle that after the snap, if he reacts in a certain way, he's taking away that concept. Come back to something that's working over the middle of the ball and something on the outside third or quarter on the backside at any level that you want. And so we're using that. I think you got to tie the footwork together. That's something that being in a new spot that I really focused on in the spring is tying the footwork to it, making sure that we are fluidly progressing. How long do you stay on the front side? Because I think the tempo of the front side concept dictates how quickly you can get to the backside. And some things you want to develop a little bit longer on the front side, so because it has high efficiency, but you don't want to wait too long. So it's kind of that balancing act. And I think the feet are always what I go back to because ultimately the more you take a 3-step drop and you hitch once. After that, I mean, good luck protecting it and good luck, doing all those things. So it's, to me, I always go back to, does it tie in with the footwork? Does it have a key defender read? Okay, great. And then there's a structure process to it that happens before the snap that's ultimately either getting us to it after the snap or really before the snap. Okay, I'm just confirming that this is actually what I think it is. And now I'm alerted to the backside, almost bypassing the front side. But I think it just takes careful consideration of what concepts you're tying together, why are you tying together, and do they solve problems that negate the front side concept?
One of the things that I always find interesting is what are other coaches studying when it comes to the college and the professional level? Like we've talked about Bobby Peters. Bobby's work is second to none. I've been big this offseason, mostly from watching your videos, looking at McVay's stuff, looking at the option routes, looking at teams that do that. What are some of the pro or college teams that you kind of really are looking at, or maybe coordinators, and what are those key indicators that you are looking for when evaluating this is something I should add to my system, or this is just something I'm interested in researching more of?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to kind of dig into. I usually since 2017 or 18, we're going to study the Rams. A big fan of what Sean McVay does. The Dolphins have gained my intrigue. I really like the Vikings system. I think They do a fantastic job. They do a lot of similar things that I'm intrigued with. I thought that, and I'm a Cincinnati guy, but it wasn't as a fan. I thought that the Bengals pass offense last year had a lot of similar principles to what we're trying to get done. So we studied them. Um, and NFL wise, that's the ones that I know that I've taken a look at this year. The Vikings were the big jump. I'd never watched it. I never watched them or the Vikings or the Bengals, and was really impressed with what I saw there. College wise, I fell in love with watching Syracuse. I think Sark does a fantastic job. I think the guys at Texas State. I know Coach Leftwich is now at Texas Tech. He's a guy to really watch out for. San Jose State. Coach Stutzman does a great job. I've gotten to know him through this podcasting world that I'm dipping my toe in, and we see the game very similarly. Ohio State, they've obviously got some outstanding talent, but I've always been a big proponent of Ryan Day, and I just think he's a really good play caller. And then you kind of work yourself down, and usually every year I'll take a look at what were the best offenses in Division II, what were the best offenses in Division III, and now obviously okay, who does it best at the NAIA level? So coming into the NAIA level, I watched as much as I could on any of the top 5 offenses. I just wanted to see what they were doing. How does it compare, contrast to what we're doing? What are they seeing defensively? I know Joe Matheson at River Falls does a fantastic job. He's one of my favorites. Drew Chance, who is at Illinois College, we will actually play them in our league. He's at Bethel in Tennessee now. He's one of the best young coordinators in the game. So I'm always trying to find, guys at multiple levels that are doing a really nice job. And ultimately, what I'm looking for is sometimes it's just intrigue. Like, okay, that's a good offense. What do they do? That's kind of the break in. But really, I have we've got our core principles and our core concepts in our system. And I'm looking for teams that run a version of that, so that I can see how they execute it. But I also look for how do defenses at their level react to it? What things are they applying to that reaction that allows them to answer problems, or what evolutions to that concept have been made in that calendar year, and essentially ways to package things that we have or build upon them. Sometimes it's just like the Dolphins, you'll always see a motion or a formation. And you're like, okay, that is a concept we run, but I've never seen it run like that off this formation. Could we build that? Do we have the mechanics and the tools in our system to build that out? And how would we use that? And ultimately, you're always looking for new ideas. But to me, what innovation is understanding what you're trying to achieve in your system, and then providing solutions for the players, right? Schematically being able to teach it, and then ultimately being able to execute it. And that's usually what I'm looking for is, can we continue to layer these concepts we've really come to know and love, and continuously build them so they don't become stale, stagnant, or easily fitted or matched out. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for, is obviously like-minded in scheme, but new layers and things on top of the concepts we already believe in.
Last question for you, Coach. This is more for the younger coaches that are out there that are listening to this and hopefully getting a lot out of it. I know I certainly have. What advice would you give to young coaches who are looking to either grow and get maybe a larger role on an offensive staff, or a coach that's saying, I want to do whatever it takes to continue to climb maybe in the collegiate level or the high school level? What advice would you give those coaches?
Yeah, I think for me, there's like two lenses of it. For number one is, I always tell guys, like, the young coaches that I get around, especially in the college level, where it's a tedious process to grow, and I'm in my own phase where it's like, it feels like it's a slow burn and slow build. But it's guys with a passion and guys with a belief. Give yourself a chance. And what I've always said with that is, I'm sure plenty of like extremely good coaches that get out of the game, whether that's burnout or just fatigue from it, or there's a lot of different reasons. But guys with that, like, to me, I just have a belief and a passion in, I love teaching, and I love being around this sport and what it can offer in just a life perspective. But I just believe in myself, and you gotta stay in the fight. You stay in the fight, give yourself a chance, and to kind of complement that answer, the growth, mentality for me is obviously, the longer I coordinate, the more I get an influence on what we're doing. But the student of the game and all that came from just there's got to be like an undying purpose and belief in studying, learning, finding new ways, finding better ways. You can never like when ask our players, like you can never hear this install enough. When they hear an install from spring and they hear me install it in next week when the kids come in, they should, it should be better. It should be more detailed. It should be more focused. It should have better explanations of concepts that may be unique or ambiguous to some degree. And I think that you can do that. I started as an unpaid assistant, and like I said before that, I was a JV defensive backs coach on like a not a good high school team. And what I always wanted to do is get around coaches that love the game, that knew ball, and listen, soak it up. When I took that first job in college, all I did was sit in that meeting room and just take notes on listening to these guys talk football. With the outreach of today, you can hear guys think and talk about football in so many different mediums and mechanisms that to me, you can never do that enough. If I could do one thing, I would just want to listen to the best coaches at any level install their system, talk to their players. That's to me where I can gain the most edge. And so, you got to get in the fight. You got to stay in the fight. You got to be willing to ride the ebbs and flows. I've had plenty of ebbs and flows myself. And then it's just this, relentless pursuit of continuously growing. Like the moment to me that you become stagnant in your process and stagnant in the attempt to grow is the moment that you get past. And if you get past enough, you're not going to elevate anymore. And so there's a lot of different ways. That's kind of why I started Student of the Game. Is like I'm not off of any tree. I didn't coach or play for any big time name. As a son of a high school coach, I love the game. I love the evolutions and the growth and the communication, the relationships of football. But to me, what I said was like, I'm going to catch up to all these people ahead of me and build a name for myself by just continuously learning the game and never stop learning. And it's like, if that's why I wanted to do this podcast with you, is I love these opportunities because it's just an opportunity to think about your process, think about your why, explain it to people listening to it on their car radio and continuing to grow. And hopefully people can hear in this podcast, I'm better than the first time I did a podcast. And to me, that's growth. And it's not because, hey, look at me, I want, to be on every podcast. It's, I want to get better. I want to be put in situations like you didn't even like, I love it because we've talked enough. You had awesome questions, but I had to adjust and go, okay, this is the question. This is what we're looking for. What is an answer that is going to fit? And to me, that's growth. That's a challenge. That's growth. I love that challenge. So a little long-winded, but get in the fight, stay in the fight. If you love it and you can do it, you really believe you can do it, don't stop. Don't stop growing. Don't stop keeping your vision pointed upward. The only limitations that can be put on yourself are by yourself, right? There's a lot of reasons why, there's been a lot of times I've been knocked down and questioned myself, and I'm sure there'll be more in the near future. But I think ultimately it's just, I believe that, I believe in myself and I believe in the process. And, if nothing else, I'm getting to meet a lot of really, really cool people, and you're one of them. And we've gotten to know each other from simply sending messages on Twitter and being able to correspond about different concepts. And now we get to do this podcast together. So that's what I would tell guys. And hopefully I can be a beacon for, I'm nobody trying to become somebody, but just working one day at a time to try to get better. And hopefully the next time we talk and after the season, I'm in that same mentality and 5 years down the road, I'm doing the same thing.